Hey guys, we have a very exciting video today. I am here with Josh Cunningham of Cunningham Tropicals. We are doing a private tour of his basement aquariums, and you have a ton of tanks down here. We're also going to talk about his fish company, which is an online retailing business where he ships fish all over the country. Very excited to show everything down here in this basement, so let's dive right in. So I am here with Josh Cunningham of Cunningham Tropicals. Is that still the name of the site, or?
So the website's Cunningham Cichlids right now. I'm working on a new site, Cunningham Tropicals. So if you go to Cunningham Tropicals, it's under construction, but there's a link to get you back to Cunningham Cichlids to buy whatever you need.
Perfect, and as you'll see, there are a lot of awesome cichlids around the fish room here, specifically with Lake Malawi, but you've expanded into a lot of tropicals lately.
Yes.
So I guess my first question is, how many tanks do you think you have down here?
Right now I have 94.
94?
It'll be 100 when I get done with my shrimp rack expansion.
Wow. And most of these are not small tanks either. What would you say the average gallons are per tank?
My smallest are 15s, my biggest are 180s. Most of the bigger ones are 160s, 150s, and then 125s I have.
So with having so many big tanks down here and some pretty big fish, does that come with a lot of maintenance and upkeep, or just tell me about kind of your water change schedule and how that works?
So the big tanks are all manual water changes, so I got a Magdar pump that we'll do every 7 to 10 days. We'll do water changes on them. I didn't drill any tanks in the middle, so I have an auto water change system that we can walk through that deals with my racks and my tanks on the wall, because I was able to put all the plumbing behind it. I didn't want to drill any tanks in the middle with customers coming over and walking around. I didn't want any PVC pipe running through my sump to get rid of the water. I also didn't want to put a tub behind there and put like a sump pump type in there and pump the water to the sump, because if that fails, then I will mess in the middle of my fish room that I don't want to deal with. So those are all manual, so we pump them out with Magdar pumps, a 1,200 and something gallon an hour pump I have.
Gotcha. We can definitely take a look at that water change system in a second, because it is awesome. And I also noticed how all these tanks have air going into them. You mentioned your air pumps on both sides of the fish room. Can you just explain how that works?
Yeah, so I run an Elita. All my air pumps are Elita brands. Nothing wrong with any other brand, but I have Elitas. I have an AL200 that's in the one corner of my fish room, and then the opposite corner I have an AL120. And then I have an AL120 and 2 AL80s as backups, because pumps will fail, and if you're relying on them 100%, you need to make sure you have backups so your fish can have oxygen and survive.
I noticed that you do have some extra filtration, a lot of tidal HOBs, which is actually my favorite, hang on the back as well. Is that kind of as a fail-safe as well, if the air ever would go out, or is it kind of just in tandem, it works really well?
In tandem. A lot of them were there because I was breeding a lot of Tropheus and Petrogrammas, because I used to do a lot of Tanganyikans like 7-8 years ago. I had 140 tanks down here back then. And I did a lot of Shelleys, Julies, all that stuff. So I went to the haps, because the HOBs, because I felt the Tropheus needed more water movement than what sponge filters I had at the time were giving them. So I switched over to box filters now, because maintenance-wise I can change the floss in the box filters a lot quicker than I can go wash all the sponges out.
You have had a lot of experience breeding, specifically with like Lake Malawi cichlids. Can you walk through why you got into that and maybe how that expanded into what you're doing today?
I was in the Marines in '94. I got out. I ended up bringing a small frontosa home with me from North Carolina. fell in love with African cichlids. I found a guy in the local paper where I lived in Monroe. He had fish for sale, African cichlids for sale, so I went over his house and he had 100-gallon tanks built in his basement wall. 2 Frontosa colonies and 1 show tank with all male haps. So I started networking with him and learning, and I worked with a store up in Dearborn Heights here in Michigan. It used to be a pet station. So I would breed fish for them and I would bring them back. I didn't even know they made fish bags back then. I would bring them in a Ziploc bag. Here's my 1-inch, hap more ice. Can I get some food or filter? So I would breed some of the fish for them and just trade them back and forth. So I really love breeding Malawi cichlids. So when I was able to do a fish room, I started out with Malawi and Victorian cichlids. Because Victorians get a bad rap too because everybody says they're aggressive, but it depends on the species you keep. So you can say that with every genus, there's an aggressive fish of everything. Yep. Live bears, killies, everything. Something's aggressive. So, you can't label, fish from this one region because of your experience with one type of those fish, right? You gotta try some out and figure out what works for you.
Exactly, and that's actually something we were just talking about off camera, is just how each cichlid can have their own personality. Some that are labeled as aggressive, like a Venustus, for example. My brother Alec has a pretty peaceful one, but in a different tank setup, it could be a terror, so you just never know. I think you just have to try out different scenarios, like you said. But I guess today, do you still do a lot of breeding with your African cichlids?
Not so much anymore. I was very active in the Ohio Cichlid Association, the Michigan Cichlid Association. I like to breed because then I could provide. When I was breeding, I wanted the rare fish. I wanted something that not everybody had, so that way I could provide it to other people in the hobby. So with participating in the clubs and the breeder awards program, I could bring in the fry, I get points for it, and you could buy it at the auction and take it home, raise them, and then breed them, so many months later or a year later, depending on what species it is. And maybe that's a fish you couldn't normally bring in from Germany, and I got them through a supplier that was doing imports. So with COVID hit, the clubs couldn't meet obviously in person, so I flipped my business around to be more of a reseller now. So we bring in fish from different wholesalers. For our cichlids, we also bring in different imports from Brazil, Colombia, for Plecos, different Cory cats, we're getting in and out different Tetras. I just brought a shipment in today with some different Tetras that we brought in. I love breeding and I'll go back to that, but for now, I want to enjoy the variety of fish because my passion is African cichlids, but there's so much more than African cichlids I'm learning with Plecos and even different live bears that are cool to keep.
Actually walking down into the basement, you walked by all these awards that you've accumulated over the years. What would you say, was that from breeding or from competitions? What was that? That
was all for breeder awards. So among active members, I'm like top 3 in the Ohio Cichlid Association with over 2,000 breeder points. I have over 2,000 in Michigan. So to me it was the competition. I love bringing them home, breeding them. I'd get rid of the group, I'd keep the fry, grow them up, turn them all in. Somebody else could work with them. So when I had 140 tanks down here, it was constant rotation of groups that I was breeding. So I had the tanks, so I could, 100 tanks or so, you can breed a lot of stuff in it. So I'd go to the BAP meetings. Here's my 20 bags of BAP for this month. So it was more competition, but it was also fun. It was all in good sport, fun.
The other thing that really stands out to me is just how nice and neat all the tanks look, especially for some of these tanks that might be growing out fish or breeding or just being ready to be sold. They just all look great. Can you explain just why that is and maybe just why you took that extra step and effort?
So I'm very OCD. So I want my fish room, all my tanks look like display tanks because that's the way I enjoy them. You spend enough time down here, you want them to be appealing to you. So if you like terracotta pots in your tank or whatever decor you like, or if you like no decor, that's your choice. I personally like decor. I chose to go work with Universal Rocks and use all their backgrounds, and then I started to switch over to their rock kits and their deco rocks as well, just to make it a little bit easier on the tank. And some real rocks are a little bit, depending on the size, they can be pretty heavy on your glass, or you put egg crate down, but I didn't want to deal with that, so I started switching away from regular rocks to for some rocks products, and I'm very happy with all the styles and the different options that they provide.
Definitely, I think it adds a great touch to all these tanks. Like you said, not only for your own enjoyment of them, but also when you're showing them on film and you're displaying them on your website, it can give people more of an idea of how they could set up their tank as well.
Exactly, yes. Yep.
And so that leads me to the other point I wanted to talk about is just your website. You can find any fish that you see in this video and any fish in the future on his website, and you can order online. So can you walk me through like the process of once an order is made online, kind of what you do and how you package it up and send it out?
Yeah, so if you order online, you have a couple options if you're ordering livestock. So you can pick UPS overnight, or you can pick Southwest cargo. So depending on certain fish, I will only ship Southwest cargo if they're more delicate or bigger, bigger Plecos or bigger Haplachromis and stuff like that. But a lot of stuff we send out UPS overnight. So if you ordered fish today, what I'll do is I'll take your order and then I'll turn around and email you. Thanks for your business, and we'll start discussing the shipping schedule. I just don't take orders in and then turn around tomorrow and put them in the mail and send them out in UPS or the post office, or I'm sorry, Southwest Cargo, because one, there's a shipping process. So if you order today, we agree next Wednesday you can accept your fish, and I'm going to send them UPS overnight. So this weekend I would make sure to fast your fish, so that way they're fasted for a couple of days or cleaned out, which helps with the shipping process, reduces the ammonia that will be in the bag from the waste with the fish. We use fish protectors, Cordon fish protector, I use Cordon Amquil, and then I use methylene blue when I'm shipping your fish. And we do walkthroughs so you can see the fish actually in the tank. I'm not great with pictures, so people are like, oh, you don't have pictures on your website? Yes, I know. So the new one will have pictures of everything when we're done with it, but we also we rely on our walkthroughs because you can actually see. I can take the best stock picture of a sunshine peacock, but that doesn't mean that's within the tank. I can have ones that are 10 times better in the tank that are available. So you actually get to see the fish that you're buying.
Exactly, and you do have a YouTube channel as well. That's Cunningham Tropicals.
Yes, it is.
And I'll leave a link to that as well in the description below, and a link to the website so that you can find any of these fish that we're talking or even showing today, which could be really cool. But I think maybe the next thing we should do is check out your custom water change system, because that really caught my eye.
Yes, let's go. Our water change system here, we've had here for about 3 years. As I explained earlier in talking with Troy, we have 64 tanks that are drilled between 15 gallons to 75 gallons. And I have it broke out in 6 zones. So I have zone 1, zone 2 through 6. And by doing that, I'm able to control water schedules for different racks. So my racks, first one, zone 1, I have a shrimp rack that's zone 2. I have another rack that's zone 3, and then we start getting into the wall. I have the wall broken up into 3 different zones. Every group has 9 tanks in the zone. What we start with over here, we had a thermostatic mixing valve put in, which is here, so it mixes my hot and cold water for me. It comes into a PVC feed here. We have a sediment filter and a carbon filter that the water will go through before it goes into the water change system. And the way it sets up is it goes through, we use unions in case we need to take this apart to fix any of the pieces, but we're using Rainbird sprinkler valves as the main controller. Another union, then we come up here to a rain valve pressure regulator. So this reduces the pressure to 30 psi, so that way we don't blow the water lines off the tanks here. And then for a safety measure, we put in a check valve, so the water can't come back into the system. So this all feeds over here, and then my water lines here feed to my wall over there. And everything's Wi-Fi enabled. It's controlled by a Ratio controller. So right now water changes run 3 days a week on racks 1, 3 in the wall, and then we run water changes once a week on our shrimp rack. So by the shrimp rack being zone 2, I'm able to isolate it out and provide something separate for the fish, for the shrimp, if they need different parameters or different water changes than the other tanks.
And Josh, with the 2 sediment filters that you mentioned, would that remove the need for dechlorinator or anything like that?
Yes, correct. So we don't use any dechlorinator here. We don't have any chloramines, we have chlorine. So the carbon filters remove the chlorine from the water.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to fire up zone 4. So it's Wi-Fi enabled. I can just go on my phone through my Ratio app, select zone 4, and we're going to run it for 3 minutes. And now it's piping water through the controller. It's going up into the water line to feed over here behind us here. So we'll start seeing the water feed. While the water feeds in on the left side of the tank and it drains out the right side of the tank. So I realized by doing this, I'm adding new water and old water, and I'm losing new water with old water because of how it's mixing. So I run them for 10 minutes. So that gets me about a good 30% water change, roughly mixed of old and new water. And then everything's drained on the side. So in case I need to get to the drains, I can shake them apart or fix them if I got to replace bulkheads or anything.
Again, thanks so much for letting me tour your place. Hopefully everyone enjoyed watching the video. Like I said, I will leave links in the description below for not only your website, but also to his YouTube channel. He does the walkthroughs of his fish room and the stock list at the time on a regular basis, roughly?
Yeah, when the new fish come in, I give them a couple of days to settle in. We also, one thing we do tier 2 is I'll do a video, but you can purchase the fish, but they're on hold. I quarantine all our fish for at least a week when they come in through the U.S. If they come from out of country, they're quarantined a minimum of 2 weeks.
Perfect. So there you have it. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and we'll see you next time.